Hey guys, this is Mitch with Fine Point CGI, and today we're going to talk about how to do VoIP inside of Godot. So we're going to go through the process of using the Godot VoIP add-on. We're going to download that add-on. We are going to set up a basic WebSocket connection, and then we are going to implement our VoIP setup, and then we are going to go ahead and test it and verify that it works. So that's what I have in store for you guys today. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is we need to download our Godot VoIP add-on. So we're going to come up here to our asset lib. We're gonna type in VoIP, and you will see that we have a Godot VoIP add-on here. So we can click on it and click download. And thank you, Cass, for making this plugin. It makes this a lot simpler. So what we can do is we can just get rid of these two, license and readme. And if you don't want the demo, you can take that demo out. There's no need to have it. And that should about do it for the plugin. So we'll click install and hit OK. And then while we're here, let's do another add-on called multi-run. So we'll type multi, and you will see that we have a multi-run add-on here. We'll click on that and we will click download. And we're going to click install. All right. Now, the nice thing about this add-on for the Godot VoIP is it does a lot of the heavy lifting for us. Really, all we need to do is create a connection between the two machines and then tell it to start listening and tell it to start recording, and it will set up our VoIP system automatically for us. It literally RPC calls to everyone that's connected and does it for us. Now, of course, if you want to use something like Nakama or something like that, then there's some additional steps you would need to do to edit his code to make it work. And we can go through that in a future Nakama tutorial. But for this tutorial, what we'll do is we'll create a socket connection to my local instance. And that should at least get us somewhere so we can test this and play around with it. So we're going to come up to our project settings, go over to our plugins, and we need to enable our two add-ons. So let's do that. And we enabled both of them and hit close. Now we need to create our scene. So let's go into our 2D scene, and we're going to make a button here. So we'll right click, add in a child node, add in a button, just like that. And we'll make it about yay big. Okay. And we'll just say speak. Okay. And that's just going to allow us to click a button so that way we can turn on our audio and do things like that. Now, this plugin has two different nodes that you can use. If you come up over here to your node 2D, you right click on it and add a child node, and you type in voice, you will notice that we have a voice instance and a voice orchestrator. Now, a voice instance is used when you only have two people talking, and a voice orchestrator is when you have multiple people talking at the same time. Now, generally speaking, unless you have a very specific use case, I would just use the voice orchestrator, but it's completely up to you. So I'm going to double click the voice orchestrator, and you'll see we have it in our scene. Now that we've set up our scene, let's create our networking code. Now, our networking code is going to be pretty simple. So if you already have some networking code, just use that. But I'm going to create some for me. So we'll right click, add in a child node, and let's add in a type node here. And we'll just name it network king. And we will right click, attach a script, and call it networking.gd. And we'll go ahead and set up our peer-to-peer connection. So the first thing we have to do is we need to start our server. So we'll come on here and we'll create a new function. So we'll say func start server, and we will say var peer is equal to a WebSocket server.new. Okay, and that's going to create a WebSocket server. Okay, and I think it would be good to kind of push the pause button real quick and talk a little bit about what a WebSocket server is. And what a WebSocket server is it's just a server that opens up a WebSocket. But what's a WebSocket, right? Well, a WebSocket is basically a port that you're opening up on your computer to allow you to have communication between your machine or multiple machines. And the reason why we use WebSockets is because WebSockets is a very flexible system and it allows bidirectional communication. A lot of times in some older games, they do a HTTP communication or something like that, where it'll ping out to an API saying, hey, here's, let's say you have an MMO, you're saying, hey, server, here's my character's location. I'm pressing W, so we're moving. Be sure to tell everyone else that we're moving. And that's basically how those older systems would work. And the server would come back and say, hey, I've understood, you are moving, no worries, we're good to go. And then it would send that data out to everybody, right? And then if anybody else is moving, it would do the same thing but backwards, right? They would talk to the server would send the data to you, and then you would say, yep, I've got the data and I'm good to go. But with WebSockets, it's slightly different. WebSockets actually is a bidirectional communication. So while I'm sending up my player data, I can be downloading other people's data. So it's a much more efficient system. So that's kind of why we're using WebSockets in this case. So after we've created our WebSocket server, let's set up our listening. So we'll say var error is equal to peer dot listen, and you need to give it a server port. In my case, I'm just going to give it something like 1,000 or maybe 10,000. And it's going to also say, hey, you need to give it a pool string array. So I'll just say pool string array. We'll just pass that in, and we're going to pass in true. Now, what this does is it creates our peer, our server, and says, hey, server, start listening for connections, okay? And true basically says, hey, I only want Godot connections to the server. The reason why is because we don't want other people to be able to post our data to Godot. So we're going to expect that it's going to be in a Godot format instead of expecting it potentially to be from, a web address or something like that. We're just going to expect Godot to Godot communication. Now, the pool string array allows you to specify what protocols you're using. Now, we don't need to specify that. Let's just let Godot handle it. But if you do need to specify it, you can pass in a pool string array of the protocols that you would expect and that you want to use during your communication with people. So now that we have that, we'll check to see if we have any errors. So if error does not equal okay, then we'll return our error, which should just be a number. And then we will set our network peer. So we'll say get underscore tree dot set network peer, and we'll pass in our peer. And that's basically just telling Godot what our network peer is. And remember, your network peer is who you're connecting to. Who is the server? I am the server, so therefore I'm going to pass in myself as a peer. When we start building up our client, we're basically going to do the same thing, but instead we're going to set our network peer as a URL instead. So basically that'll be the difference. And then we will go ahead and return okay, just to say that, hey, everything went well and we are good to go. So now that we have that, we need to set up our client. So we'll say func start client, and we will create our WebSocket server, much like we're doing here. So literally we can just copy and paste. And we're going to need to set up our peer. So we will say var error is equal to peer. We can basically just copy and paste that. Dot connect to underscore URL. And here's where some of the fanciness kind of comes in. So we'll hit quote, WS for WebSocket :// we need to pass in what server IP we're using. In this case, since we're hard coding this, 127.0.0.1 : I believe I chose 1000, so we'll say 1000, comma, and we have to pass in our pool string array, much like we just did earlier. And just like the last time, we have to pass in true to say that we are using Godot to Godot communication. So basically, the difference between this and this is we are setting up our server and we are connecting to a URL, which is connecting to our server. Simple enough, right? Now, the beauty of it is we can just copy this little bit of code here. And actually, we can basically just copy all of this and come down here like so and paste it. And there we go. We have our starting client, starting server, and we are good to go. Now, if we want to, we could also set up a stop, which basically says, hey, I'm disconnecting. And that way we're not dirtying up our water at all. We're just kind of, disconnecting kindly, I guess you could say. But that's not really the purview of this tutorial. If you want me to cover it, I can, but it's not really necessary for this tutorial. But we'll save this and we will call our scene voice tutorial scene, I guess. I think that's fine. And now that we have this, we have probably about 80% of our code done at this point, which is kind of amazing because of how simple all of this works. All right, so now that we have all of our code pretty much done, at least for our networking side, let's come in and add a few more buttons, because I didn't think about how we were going to start our client and start our server. We actually need a button to do that. So what we'll do is we'll come over here, we'll right click, add a child node. Let's add in a second button here. Let's make it about yay big. We'll go about here and say connect to server, and then we're going to duplicate that button and we will say start server. Now we only need to do start server on our host and we only need to do connect to server on our clients. So, you're not going to necessarily click both of these at the same time, but that's okay. Now we're going to right click our node 2D. We're going to attach a script and we'll call it game manager, because I always have to have a manager of some kind whenever I do any of my tutorials. So we'll do that and we'll come in here and connect our signals. So the first one is speak. We're going to go to our node on button down. We'll just attach that to our script here. We're going to do the same thing with button 2 on button down, and the same thing with our third one on button down. And if we go to our script, you will see that we have our functions here. So the first one is on speak button down. This is actually the part where we set up our speaking. And this is the easiest possible method to get speaking, because a lot of the heavy lifting has been done for us. So first we need to get a reference to our voice orchestrator. So let's come up here and let's just say var voice is of type voice orchestrator. And then on ready, we can just say voice is equal to $ voice orchestrator, just like that. And that will basically just set up our little voice orchestrator here. And now we also need a link to our network. So we'll say var network, and we'll come down here and say network is equal to $networking, just like that. And now we need to connect a few signals. So there's a few signals that this voice orchestrator has that's really important. So the first one is received voice data and the other one is sent voice data. So we'll say voice.connect, and you'll see that we have a nice list here. We'll say received voice data, comma, self, comma, and we'll just pass in a function that we don't have built yet, and that's going to be underscore received underscore voice underscore data. Simple enough. And then we're going to do the same thing for our next one, dot connect, and that's going to be sent underscore voice underscore data, comma, self, comma, and then we'll do our standard underscore sent underscore voice underscore data. And I spelled received wrong because I know how to spell. There we go. And that should about do it for us. So as long as I don't have any mistakes, there we go. Now we got to make these functions. So we'll copy this name and we'll say func. And I'm doing wonders with spelling today, and we'll do that. And for now, we're going to pass, and then we'll do the next one, sent voice data, and we'll pass that as well. And we don't need that little 8 in there. There we go. All right. Now, when we press our button, let's set our voice recording to true. So we'll say voice.recording is equal to true, and that will allow us to talk. Now, we also want to say voice.listen is equal to true as well. Now, if you feel like making this a switch, you can. You could say something like, if you click on this, it's going to make it so that you can talk and listen. And then if you click it again, it's going to shut it off. But in my case, I'm just going to keep it like this. Well, actually, you know what? We'll go ahead and do it. I mean, it'll be pretty easy. So what we'll do is we'll come up here and say var recording is equal to false. And we'll come down here and say recording is equal to not recording, which will just give us whatever the opposite is. And then we'll just set this to whatever recording is. So if it's false, it'll make it true, and then it'll pass it down here. And then if it's true, it'll make it false, and then it'll pass it down through here. So that way we are recording and listening at the same time. Now that we have that, let's set up our connection. So the first one, button 2, is our connect to server. So let's make that run. So first we'll just say var error is equal to network dot. And you can see if we go over to our networking, we have a function called, I believe since this one is connect to server, we're going to need to grab our start client. So we'll grab that, paste that in, and then we'll say if error does not equal okay, then we need to print quote failed to connect to server. And we could pass our error if we want to. So we could do something like %s %, error. And that'll basically give us whatever our error is. So that's just something to keep in mind. It's actually really useful to do it this way. And then we need to return. Else, if it works, then let's just print connecting. All right. So now if we're doing the same thing on our server side, except for this time we're starting our server. So let's just grab this bit of code, paste it in, and say networking dot, and I believe we called it start server. So we'll copy that, paste it. There we go. And that pretty much does it for what we're trying to do. Now, when we're doing our starting server, we can just say server started, just like that. So now, if everything's been done correctly, we should be able to at least test this. So we'll click on the multi-run, that's this thing right here, and this will open up 2 versions of Godot, and you'll see that it gave us a project manager. That's because we didn't set a main scene, and that was my fault. So we will set our current scene, and then let's rerun it. There we go. We have 2 of them. So if we hit connect to server, you'll see that we have a error, a non-existent function connect URL. So that's not good. So let's take a look at our peer. That is an actual object. It's a WebSocket. That's fine. That's what I wanted. So usually when I run into this, I look up the symbol, and let's take a look to see if I missed something here. So get peer address is listening. Oh, you know, I think I think I know what I did. So this is a WebSocket server, and we need to do a client, not a WebSocket server. So WebSocket client.new, and then do our peer connect. So that's my fault. So we'll kill that, kill this. We'll hit play and try it again. And this time we're going to start our server, start server. Server has been started. We will connect to server. And then let's see if we click speak and speak. Do we get feedback? Not that I can tell. We do have some errors, it looks like. Error calling signal method received voice data. Error calling signal method sent voice data. So that's not great. Now we're going to need to come in here and adjust this because this actually gets called with 2 arguments. As you can see with this error here, it says expected 0 but called with 2. That means that we have 2 arguments here. And the 2 arguments we have is a data argument and we have an ID argument. And then for the send voice data, we just have the data argument here. And now if we run test, let's see what it does. So if I start the server, I connect to a server, I click speak, and I click speak. Do we get any feedback? I don't think so. All right, so you'll see right here, we have need to enable project settings, audio, enable audio input. I thought we did that, but I guess we didn't. So let's come in here, go to general, and you can see if we scroll down here to audio right here, and we need to enable audio input. So let's hit OK and save and reset our editor. All right, so now that we've reset our editor, let's come in here and instead of setting our listen to recording, let's instead just set that to true. So I'm going to put this up here and we'll just set that to true automatically. And that'll just allow us to listen to our stuff immediately. That'll probably make it a little bit easier when we're debugging. So let's hit go and let's see what it does. So first we're going to start a server. We're going to connect to the server. We're going to hit speak. And you will see if I unmute my background music, my background noise, you'll hear a double me almost. You can barely hear it, but it does work. Let me see if I can increase my volume a little bit. And you can hear that we have voice over IP working. Awesome. So now that we have this, we need to look at some of the options that they have. So I'm going to close these guys. I'm going to come over to the voice orchestrator, and you can see that he has some options here. So the first one is recording. The second one is listening. So you can set your script to always listen or always record. You can set your input threshold. Now, input threshold is how loud someone needs to be before it picks it up. This is a useful bit right here that allows people to customize how much background noise gets filtered out. So this would be good to expose to the user. Same thing with really all of this, but this one really would be good to expose. So that's pretty much all you need to know about how to make VoIP in Godot. So basically you just create a connection and then you basically just call voice.listen and voice.recording and set that to true. And that's pretty much it. As soon as the connection happens, it does all the RPC calls for you and everything's done. Now, if you did follow my Nakama WebRTC tutorial, basically this will work just without the connection stuff. You don't need to put any of that in. You just need to do the voice recording and all of that, and it'll just handle it. Now, if you followed my Nakama non-WebRTC, which is the tutorial where we actually use Nakama as its main server, if you follow that tutorial, you can't use this add-on as it stands. You need to make some adjustments. And the adjustments are pretty simple. If you come into your voice instance right here and you look for a remote function called speak, all you need to do is register with this with the remote RPC section like we showed you in the I showed you in the tutorial, where you just basically register it as a remote function and then you call it as a remote function. So anywhere it says speak, you would just call it through nakama.call remote function, I think it's called, and then it'll just basically handle it from there. So that's just something to keep in mind. But for the most part, it's pretty simple to make it work. But that is all I have for you guys today. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. Hey, if you dislike this video, go ahead and hit that dislike button because I am here to make content for you guys. This video was a viewer suggested video, as with all of my videos. So if you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll be more than happy to add it to my Trello board, which I have a link to in the description below. Now, I am working on a menu transition tutorial, so you can actually like click around on menus and have nice good transitions and things like that. And I also am working on a Godot 3.5 tutorial going over the 2D and 3D navigation using the new navigation system and how how to approach that in a good way. And hey, if you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below or hit me up on my Discord, links in the description, and I'll be more than happy to help you with any issues you might have. But that is all I have for you guys today. So thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you all next time. Thanks.